Okay, so who hasn't spent like way too much time trying to figure out if someone is, really into them or just being friendly?
Oh, yeah, it's the classic dilemma.
Right. It's like, are they flirting or are they just being nice? Ugh, it's so confusing. But today we're going to do a deep dive into a piece that explores the signs a woman might be falling in love. And don't worry, this isn't going to be like your typical cheesy dating advice column.
No, not at all.
We're going to go beyond those grand romantic gestures and really get into like the psychology behind those everyday actions that can actually tell you so much about someone's feelings.
That's right. It's amazing, how much we can actually learn about a person's true feelings just from how they act, even if they're not ready to say those three little words out loud.
Exactly. And you know what? I'm so guilty of misreading signals. I mean, there was this one time where I thought this guy was like totally smitten with me because he kept offering me his fries.
Yeah.
But it turns out he was just a fry fanatic. So yeah, this deep dive is going to like help us decode those subtle signals, those things that go beyond a shared plate of French fries to really reveal genuine attraction. What do you think?
I think that's a great way to put it. And one of the first things the source highlights is curiosity.
Okay, so curiosity.
Right. When a woman is falling for you, she'll genuinely want to know more about, your world, your life.
So she's asking questions.
Yeah. She'll ask about your dreams, your passions, even your family. And it's not just about the questions themselves, but like the way she asks them.
So like think back to, I don't know, a recent conversation you've had. Did they like seem genuinely interested in what you had to say?
Exactly.
Were they asking follow-up questions? Were they like really digging into what makes you tick?
That's such a great point. And I think we've all been on the receiving end of those polite but superficial questions where, you can just tell the other person's mind is a million miles away.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So it's about paying attention to the feeling behind the words. Like, are her eyes lighting up when she asks about your passions?
Ooh, that's good.
Does her body language, suggest she's truly engaged in the conversation? She's leaning in, making eye contact, really absorbing what you're saying.
Yeah, that's a good point. But I mean, couldn't someone be asking like all the right questions just to be polite, even if they're not actually interested?
Right. That's a good question.
So how do you tell the difference between like genuine curiosity and just, social decorum?
That's where it gets tricky and why it's so important to look at the bigger picture. It's about noticing patterns and consistency in her behavior,
Okay, so you're saying it's not just one conversation.
Exactly. Does she only seem to pay attention when you're talking about something she finds, inherently interesting? Or does she consistently show genuine interest in your thoughts and feelings, even when the topic might not be her usual cup of tea?
Got it. So context and consistency are key.
That's it.
Okay, now another sign the source points out is the desire for proximity. So they're talking about things like laughing at your jokes, even the bad ones.
Oh, that's a good one.
Texting frequently, or just, seeming to like gravitate towards you in a room.
And there's actually a fascinating psychological phenomenon called mirroring that ties into this.
Mirroring.
Yeah. When we're attracted to someone, we often subconsciously mimic their posture, their gestures, even their tone of voice. It's like our body is instinctively trying to like build rapport and show that we're on the same wavelength.
So like if you notice she tends to cross her legs after you do or tilts her head in a similar way when you're talking.
Exactly. Those could be like subtle signs of attraction.
Ooh, that's interesting. So we're talking about more than just like physically being near someone, right?
Right.
It's about those subtle, almost like unconscious ways we align ourselves with people we're drawn to.
Precisely. Now, I know what you're thinking though.
Oh no, what am I thinking?
What about those people who always seem to be hovering around the snack table at parties?
Oh my gosh, yes.
Is that proximity or just a strategic move for prime dip access?
Okay, you totally read my mind, because like, I swear some people have a sixth sense for where the good snacks are hiding.
That's a great observation. And it brings us back to, the importance of context and looking for those consistent patterns. Does she only seem to like gravitate towards you when there's food involved? Or does she seem to want to be near you regardless of the circumstances?
Okay, so we're starting to see a theme here. It's not about any like single action in isolation, but it's really about the overall pattern of behavior.
Exactly.
And that leads us to another important point the source raises, which is the importance of intimate moments.
Yes.
Now, when we say intimate, we're not necessarily talking about like romantic gestures, right?
Exactly.
It's more about those times when you can both let your guard down, be yourselves, and connect on a deeper level. It could be as simple as like making dinner together, sharing a quiet walk, or even just truly listening without distractions while they talk about their day.
Those moments where you can really sense that genuine connection and vulnerability.
Exactly. And the source emphasizes that these moments are like crucial for building trust and deepening that emotional connection.
And sometimes a woman might even use these quieter, more intimate settings to express feelings she's not yet comfortable saying out loud. So paying attention to like the vibe, the energy in those moments can be really insightful.
That's so true. This reminds me of this one time when a close friend of mine confided in me during a late night chat.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it wasn't like a big dramatic confession or anything, but the fact that she felt comfortable sharing something so personal with me, in that moment, it just like solidified our bond in a way that words never could have.
That's a perfect example. Sometimes it's not about like the grand declarations, but those small, quiet acts of trust and vulnerability that really, deepen a connection.
Absolutely. And speaking of those subtle but powerful ways we communicate, the source also highlights something we often overlook, which is the power of eye contact.
Oh, yes, eye contact.
It's funny because, in today's world, we're constantly like looking at our phones or we're distracted by a million things. I mean, when was the last time you really, truly looked someone in the eye and held that gaze? I bet you'll start noticing it more now that we're talking about it.
Oh, totally. I know I will.
Right. We often take eye contact for granted, but it's actually one of the most powerful ways to build like an emotional connection with someone.
It really is. And there's even like some fascinating science behind this. When we're attracted to someone, our pupils dilate.
What?
Yeah, it's an involuntary response. So even if she's not like consciously trying to send a signal, her eyes might be giving her away.
Whoa, that's incredible. It's like our bodies have their own secret language that we're not even aware of.
They absolutely do. And another sign that the source points out is valuing your opinion.
Okay, so valuing your opinion.
Yeah. If she's asking for your input on decisions, big or small, it shows a level of respect and trust that goes beyond, casual friendship.
It's like she's saying, I value your perspective. I want to know what you think.
Exactly. And it's not just about seeking your opinion, but also like sharing her own thoughts and feelings with you,
Right, so there's that reciprocity.
Yes. The source mentions that this reciprocal vulnerability is like key to building true intimacy.
And it's about creating a space where both people feel comfortable sharing their, inner world.
Exactly. And that level of like emotional intimacy is just a key ingredient in any strong relationship, romantic or otherwise.
I mean, this is making me realize like how much we communicate without even saying a word. It's like we're constantly sending and receiving these like subtle signals, through our actions, our body language, even our eye contact.
It is. And that's what makes, this deep dive so fascinating.
Yeah, for sure.
It's about becoming more aware of those subtle cues, not just in, romantic relationships, but like in all our interactions.
So we've talked about curiosity, proximity, intimate moments, eye contact, and valuing each other's opinions. But what about those big, like, romantic gestures? Does the source buy into all that?
Well, interestingly enough, it actually like downplays the importance of grand gestures. Instead, it focuses on like the power of consistency, patience, and those small acts of care that add up over time.
So it's not about the big flashy stuff.
Right, because those grand gestures can be exciting in the moment, but they don't necessarily, reflect genuine lasting feelings.
Because anyone can pull off a grand gesture once in a while.
Exactly. It's those like everyday acts of kindness that really show someone you care.
Right. It's about showing up consistently, being present, and making an effort to, bring joy into someone's life in those small but meaningful ways.
Like texting good morning, remembering their favorite coffee order, or, offering a listening ear after a tough day.
That's so true. This reminds me of a time when I was going through a really rough patch, and my friend, she didn't like make some big dramatic gesture or anything.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but every day she'd send me a funny meme or just like check in to see how I was doing. And honestly, those small acts of kindness just like meant the world to me.
Oh, that's so sweet.
And it really showed me how much she truly cared.
That's a beautiful example because it's often those, small, thoughtful actions that truly speak to the heart.
Right. They show that someone is not just like thinking of you, but actively trying to make your day a little brighter.
Exactly. So while those grand gestures can be exciting, it's those consistent small acts of care that really build a foundation for a lasting, loving relationship.
And speaking of building relationships, the source makes a really important point, which is that Love is a two-way street.
Oh, absolutely.
It's not just about like looking for signs in the other person, but being mindful of our own actions and, how they might be perceived.
Right. We can't just like sit back and analyze someone else's behavior
Yeah.
without taking responsibility for our own side of the equation.
Exactly. It's like that saying, be the person you want to attract. If we're looking for, genuine connection and affection, we need to be giving that same energy out into the world.
You got it. It's about asking ourselves, like, are we being curious? Are we making an effort to connect? Are we showing up in a way that feels, genuine and authentic?
Because ultimately, healthier relationships are built on mutual respect, trust, and effort, right?
Absolutely.
So if actions speak louder than words, what are your actions saying? It's a question worth pondering, don't you think?
I think so too. It's easy to get caught up in analyzing external signs, but true understanding really comes from looking inward as well.
This has been such an insightful deep dive already. We've explored some, fascinating signs that a woman might be falling in love, and we've learned so much about the psychology behind nonverbal communication in general.
It's been really interesting.
But we're not done yet. We've got to continue this journey in part 2.
It's interesting, right? Like how much our society, emphasizes these grand gestures and pronouncements when it comes to love.
Yeah, it's like we're supposed to expect these big, over-the-top displays of affection.
Right.
But in reality, it's often those small, consistent actions that really speak to someone's true feelings.
Exactly. And the source really emphasizes that point. It talks about how small acts of service,
Oh, right.
those thoughtful gestures that show you're thinking of them,
Yeah.
those can be way more meaningful than a dozen roses or a fancy dinner.
Totally. I always think about it in terms of gift giving, a big expensive present. Sure, it's nice. But what really makes me feel loved is when someone gives me something small and thoughtful, something that shows they really know me and pay attention to the things that I care about.
Oh, that's such a good point. It's those personalized gestures, right?
Yeah.
The ones that really demonstrate that deep level of understanding and care.
Exactly, like remembering someone's favorite author and surprising them with a new book.
Oh, I love that.
Or picking up their favorite snack just because.
Yes. And it goes beyond, material things too.
Oh, for sure.
Like offering to help with a chore they've been dreading.
Ugh, yes. The worst.
Or simply lending a listening ear when they're having a rough day, Those acts of service can be so powerful.
Absolutely. Because it shows that you're not just there for the, fun times, but that you're willing to roll up your sleeves and be there for them through, thick and thin.
That's it. It's about demonstrating your love through action, not just words.
And the source actually uses a really interesting analogy to illustrate this.
Oh, what is it?
Okay, so it talks about how grand gestures are like fireworks.
Okay.
Flashy and impressive in the moment, but fleeting.
Right.
While those small, consistent acts of care, they're more like building a fire.
Oh, wow.
It takes time and effort, but the warmth and comfort it provides lasts much longer.
I love that. That's such a great analogy.
Yeah, it's a really powerful.
Where it perfectly captures the difference, between those superficial displays of affection and the kind of deep, abiding love that really sustains a relationship over time.
And you know what? This isn't just about romantic relationships. This applies to friendships, family relationships, any kind of connection where you're trying to cultivate genuine care and affection.
Oh, totally. It's so true. Yeah, those small acts of kindness and consideration, they're like the building blocks of any strong relationship, really.
Yeah, for sure.
They show the other person, that you value them and you're invested in their well-being.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. We talked about the importance of genuine curiosity, the power of proximity and mirroring, those subtle yet powerful moments of intimacy.
Yeah.
And the lasting impact of consistent acts of care.
So much good stuff.
I know. But as we kind of wrap up this deep dive, I think it's important to circle back to something we touched on earlier, which is that love is a two-way street.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's so easy to get caught up in, analyzing the other person's behavior.
Totally.
And looking for those signs of their affection.
Yeah.
But we also need to be mindful of our own actions and, what message we're sending out into the world.
Exactly. We can't just expect the other person to do all the heavy lifting when it comes to building a connection, right?
Right.
We need to be actively participating, showing up authentically, and demonstrating our own care and affection.
Exactly. It's about asking ourselves, like, are we being the kind of partner,
Yeah.
friend, or family member
Yeah.
that we would want to have in our own lives?
That's a good question.
You know, are we putting in the effort to create a space of mutual respect, trust, and vulnerability?
It's almost like holding up a mirror to ourselves, right?
Yeah, I love that.
Like if we want to attract genuine love and affection, we need to be embodying those qualities in our own interactions, you know?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's like we're sending out a signal,
Yeah.
and the kind of energy we project will ultimately determine the kind of energy we attract.
And you know, as we kind of reflect on all these different signs and signals, I think the most important takeaway is that it's not just about what people do, but the feeling behind it.
I couldn't agree more. We can analyze actions and behaviors all day long,
Oh yeah.
but it's that, intangible sense of genuine care and connection.
Yeah.
That's what truly makes a relationship special.
It's like that feeling you get when you know someone like truly sees you, understands you, and appreciates you for who you are.
Yes.
And that's something that goes far beyond, any grand gesture or outward display of affection.
Beautifully said. It's about that, deep, soulful connection that transcends words and actions,
Totally.
And that brings us to a really fascinating point that the source makes about the power of intuition.
Okay, this is where things get really interesting.
Right.
I've always been so intrigued by the idea of intuition and how it plays into our relationships.
Well, the source suggests that, when it comes to figuring out someone's true feelings, we shouldn't discount the power of our own gut instincts.
Okay, gut instincts.
It talks about how, sometimes we just sense things on a deeper level, even if we can't, quite articulate why.
Yeah, I think we've all had those moments where we just have a feeling about someone
Oh, totally.
or a situation, even if there's no logical explanation for it.
Exactly. And the source encourages us to, pay attention to those feelings, even if they go against what our rational mind might be telling us.
That's interesting, but how do we know if we're truly tapping into our intuition?
Yeah.
Or just letting our own insecurities or wishful thinking, cloud our judgment?
That's a great question. And that's where self-awareness becomes so important.
Oh.
The source suggests taking some time to really tune into your own inner voice.
So getting quiet.
Exactly.
Okay.
What are your gut feelings telling you about this person? Do you feel a sense of ease and comfort around them?
Yeah.
Or is there something that feels, off, even if you can't quite put your finger on it?
Right. That makes sense. It's almost like learning to trust that inner compass, even if it's leading us in a direction we weren't expecting.
Exactly. And you know what? The source makes a really interesting point about how our intuition can actually often be more accurate than our logical mind, especially when it comes to, matters of the heart.
Really?
It talks about how our subconscious mind picks up on all sorts of subtle cues and signals that our conscious mind might miss.
So we're processing information on a deeper level, even if we're not fully aware of it.
Exactly.
That's fascinating.
And that can be so valuable when it comes to, navigating the complexities of relationships.
Totally.
Absolutely. And, the source even goes so far as to suggest that sometimes those initial gut feelings we have about someone can be incredibly accurate predictors of, long-term compatibility.
So you're saying that our intuition might actually be giving us clues about whether or not a relationship has the potential to go the distance.
That's what the source seems to suggest.
Wow.
Of course, it's not about making snap judgments based on a fleeting feeling, but if you consistently have, a strong positive gut feeling about someone,
Yeah.
it might be worth paying attention to.
So as we wrap up this part of our deep dive, it seems like the message is pretty clear.
What is it?
Pay attention to those gut instincts.
Yes.
They might just be trying to tell you something important.
Right.
And remember, it's not just about what people say or do,
Yeah.
but the feeling behind it.
That's where the real magic lies.
Exactly. This whole deep dive has really made me think about all the stuff I was totally missing before, when it comes to those little signs and signals.
So easy to get, stuck in our own heads.
Yeah.
And just miss those really important cues that can tell us so much about how someone really feels, deep down.
And as we were talking about intuition and all that, I was thinking about how it's almost like learning a whole new language.
That's such a good way to put it. It's like tuning into a different frequency,
Yeah.
one that, goes beyond just words and actions.
Right. And once you start paying attention, It's crazy how much you can pick up on.
I know. It's like you suddenly realize this whole other level of communication was like always there, but you just weren't tuned into it before.
And the source actually makes this really interesting point about how, like, being able to read those subtle cues can actually make our relationships, richer and more fulfilling.
Because when you're able to really understand someone on a deeper level, it just creates this amazing sense of intimacy and connection that, goes way beyond just the surface.
It's like you're speaking the same language even when you're not saying a word.
Exactly. And that's something that can benefit any relationship, really, whether it's romantic, platonic, or even professional.
So I think as we kind of wrap up this deep dive, it's important to remember that, even though the source we've been talking about focuses on signs a woman might be falling in love, these insights can really apply to understanding anyone regardless of gender.
Totally. The fundamental principles of nonverbal communication are universal.
Right.
We all express our feelings through, our actions and our body language and our energy.
So whether you're trying to figure out the intentions of a potential romantic partner or just wanting to, deepen your connection with a friend or a family member, these insights can be super valuable.
Absolutely. And I think, the most important takeaway is this. It's not just about what people say or do, but the feeling behind it,
Yeah, that's where the real understanding is.
That's it.
So pay attention to those subtle cues, trust your intuition, and remember that the most powerful communication often goes beyond words.
It's been so fun exploring all this with you.
Me too.
I hope our listeners enjoyed this deep dive as much as we have.
And we'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences too,
Yeah, for sure.
Have you ever had a time when someone's actions just spoke louder than words? Share your stories with us, and let's keep this conversation going, even after the episode is over.
Until next time, happy decoding, everyone.